Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with Inc. 500 business entrepreneur turned parent coach, Andy Goldstrom. As the founder of Parents Journey Coaching, he is a coach who helps parents better navigate the challenges of raising children today. As a prior business owner, he helps listeners best understand how to determine and achieve their personal, professional, and financial priorities. At the same time, he helps listeners with suggested parenting approaches. It's been quite a ride. He gets into all of it and so much more. Enjoy the interview.
Nice to hear from you. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out for the show today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
So before we get into your life as an entrepreneur and a coach, I want to kind of cover what the global elephant in the room spent for the last 3 years living through this pandemic. And I'm wondering how you survived that COVID time as the world's waking up and opening up more now, and how it's changed the way that you both live your life and conduct business now.
Oh, that's a big question, open-ended question. I traveled the world quite a bit on business over time and didn't spend a ton of time at home. And so being confined to the house, having to spend more time with my family, actually created a greater appreciation for the relationships I had with my family members, and I became closer to them as a result of it. You also realize who your real friends are, not just when you go through adversity, but the people who were able to stay in touch when you were, when you physically couldn't get together because of the safety issues and all the rest. And I had to, kind of change my business model in terms of the way I was doing my coaching because, I couldn't be in front of people, and I'm a very engaging, hands-on, gregarious kind of guy. And so it kind of changed the way I had to adapt and also feel affirmed in what I was doing. So it was, I think we're on the back end of it now. It's not perfectly completed. I actually know somebody who just got COVID this past week still. But I think it's mostly in the rearview mirror, but there was certainly a lot of lessons to be learned, and it wasn't an easy time for a lot of people.
For such an open-ended question, you did a great job of tying all those strings together. Yeah, it's weird. I hesitate to say that it's over with because people are still getting infected. In fact, we're here in Kansas City, and the manager for the Royals, his first year, he got COVID on like the second or third day of the season. So it's definitely still going around. So, in your capacity, I know you've switched gears professionally in your life, but let's get a handle on exactly what you do right now. So let's put you in front of a bunch of grade school kids, second, third graders for a career day. One of the kids looks up at you and asks, "What do you do for a living?" How do you answer that child?
That's probably the best question I've ever been asked, and you'll see why. It was a really good one, and the reason I suggest that is I work with parents to help them have more confidence and joy in their parenting and their skills. And so I'm a certified parent coach. And I became a certified parent coach because I had some trouble with my younger child who went through some anxiety and depression, and I realized it was kind of a lonely place where I didn't have a lot of guidance and people to reach out to, and realized that people needed help. And so it's interesting because it's called parenting. It's not called childing. And because it's called parenting, I would actually tell these young kids that I work to help parents understand you, young kids, and what you're going through so they can help you achieve what you want. And young kids, kids of any age or people of any age, whether they're senior citizens or young kids, they just want a sense of control and understanding. And if you can allow them to make choices and put yourself in their shoes, you go a long way. And a lot of my coaching just has to do with that, because a lot of parents really focus on the way that they were raised or the way that they see the world. as an example, yesterday I was speaking with a lawyer who really values education, and that's great, but your kid might not be cut out for, having a PhD. They may have other interests or other ways that they want to have their own journey, and you got to support whatever that journey is. Obviously, you want them to be happy and independent, but just because you got a PhD doesn't mean they need to have a PhD.
Well said. So when you were a kid, second, third grade, what was your dream? What did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, I wanted to be an athlete. Are you kidding me?
What sport?
So, baseball. So my grandfather on my mother's side, when he was a teenager, an older teenager and a young adult, worked as a vendor at Yankee Stadium in the days of Ruth and Gehrig, so in the 1920s. So I grew up with all these stories and all these, all this background. And so, I went to a lot of games. I really like math. So I'm kind of a statistics kind of guy, and I've always enjoyed baseball. And I live in Atlanta now. I work with clients across the country and some outside of the U.S. And I've kind of migrated to following the Braves more frequently. But the Yankees have always been my team.
Yeah, the Braves are going to come to Kansas City. I don't know when that happened.
Today. They play today. They're there tonight.
Yeah, which is weird because I can't remember the last time. And this is the funny thing. When John Schuerholz won the 85 series shortly thereafter, he went to Atlanta and built that dynasty with Maddox and Schultz and all those cats. So it's kind of funny how in sports, there's a blueprint that gets duplicated. Like the Chiefs tried to do it with the New England thing back in the 90s, and it was disastrous. So anyway, I always find the Braves and Royals to be a little bit kind of akin. They really rely on a good farm nucleus to kind of get them where they want to go. They always have good GMs. They have a solid blue-collar fan base. So there's a lot of similarities, I think, between Kansas City and Atlanta.
And if it wasn't for Jose Soler, who was a Royal before he became a Brave, he was the World Series MVP in 2021.
Yeah, and, my wife, that was her favorite player whenever he left. And I remember the thing about Soler, this is the interesting thing, is that we got him because we traded Wade Davis, who was the champion of the 15 series. He was the iconic pitcher. And I remember the first time that Soler went up to bat, he snapped his bat over his knee, struck out. And I just remember the commentators, Rex Hudler was like, "Oh, Ned Yost doesn't like that." And I was like, dude, when that guy went back to the bench, he was going to get read the riot act because he was that kind of guy. He would get fired up. He'd either be really calm under pressure or he would snap. But, yeah, the fact that he got over there, and I was rooting for him when he hit that home run, especially because it was against the Astros. It was so good to see.
Yeah, and I even remember Rex Hudler. He was an infielder, utility infielder.
And Rex Hudler is gonzo. We love him here. He is one of the happiest, coolest guys. In fact, my son is on the autism spectrum, and he's a part of the YMCA special needs program. And Rex's son has Downs, and he's really a part of the special needs community here. So my son was in a fashion auction right before the world shut down in 2020 around January, and I got to meet Rex. He is absolutely 100% what you see on camera. He is larger than life, nice as he can be, one of the coolest people I've ever met.
That's great. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I was going to say real quick, that's a fascinating, especially being a baseball fan, that's a fascinating story about the Yankees. And I was watching the game last night, and where the Yankees are right now, the fans look so sad in Yankee Stadium. Like, even last year when they booed during the playoffs, there is a turbulence that's going on in that sports community with the Yankees, and it's really weird to see.
Well, it's been 14 years since they won their last World Series, and I think they've only had, I think from 62 to 77 was the only longer stretch of going without a World Series win. So, but they've got a good team. They just got to get by. They just got to get by the first round.
Yeah, they certainly do. Yeah. So let's get to the heart and essence of what has made you who you are. Take me back to where you were born and raised, and what some of these seeds that were planted in you to be in business and to be in your profession of helping parents and giving to people. How did that happen?
This is another good question. A lot of what shaped me as an adult was an unfortunate event, and that was my parents got divorced when I was 12, and I got stuck in the middle between both my parents in terms of blame and in terms of money, and I felt a big sense of rejection. And so the way I've always operated, some people, when they have an incident like that, they turn against people and they become mean or difficult or all the rest. I was looking for more affirmation, and so I actually, because of the rejection, and so I actually became, tried to become the more nice and thoughtful guy, good, bad, or otherwise. And so I've always had a propensity to look out for other people, help develop other people. That's helped me in my career, trying to understand other people, and that's given me a sense of doing good and a sense of also feeling good and like I'm helping, and it's helped me in my career too, because I never wanted to be, because of the money situation, I never wanted to be reliant on others. And so I started working when I was 13. I've never stopped working. I became an entrepreneur and became someone who was independent financially and could always rely on my own grit. And one of the companies that I started and was a partner in actually became an Inc. 500 company, which was one of the fastest growing privately held companies in the United States. So we did okay.
So what is it ultimately? We all have our days. We wake up, things get us out of bed, lead us through the day. What's the ultimate motivator for you to achieve, excel, and to grow as a human?
I think it's connection. Everybody wants connection. I'm not in it at this point for the money. I've made the money. I just want the connection to people and want to help people. I went through a tough time with my daughter. My daughter's in a better place now, but it wasn't easy. We actually we tried a lot of local solutions, and that included, therapists and psychiatrists and tutors and school, extra help, IEP school programs, and none of those worked. And she became, she started doing drugs. She started self-harming. She started driving while intoxicated. She was a threat to herself and to others, and we couldn't find any other solution. And so we ended up sending her away to a wilderness program and then a residential treatment program, and she vanished from our lives basically for 13 months. And it was an opportunity. We saw her a couple times, but she needed more advanced therapy than we were able to give her, and more coping mechanisms and skills. And at the same time, we needed, as parents, my wife and I needed to reconnect. We needed to grieve. We needed to forgive each other because our parenting styles are very different. I was a more get her done kind of guy. My wife was more of a rescuer. And we weren't well aligned. So, and then the phone started ringing. People said, I know somebody whose child, is considering wilderness therapy, or the kid is in jail, or the kid's, on drugs, or, we just can't figure this parenting thing out. What did you do, or how can you help us? And that's what kind of led me down the path that I'm on. And I get a lot of satisfaction out of, out of connecting the dots and helping people. And a lot of the patterns with parents who struggle is the same. And parents do their best. And I work with single parents. I work with co-parents who are separated or divorced. And certainly I work with couples that have been together that are struggling as well. And, I worked with one family that I refer to that I worked with a couple of years ago, where the family, the dad or the patriarch of the family passed away, and the mother and the kids weren't connecting. And literally I got a call from the mother, and the kids, were willing to partake in the coaching, and they weren't talking to each other. They weren't visiting each other. And this was the beginning of November, a couple of years ago, or a year and a half ago. And, by Christmas, they were celebrating Christmas together because of some of the things I was able to facilitate. And, what better outcome can there be than that? Kids and their families. These were young adults dealing with their mother, but I work with kids I don't work with parents of young kids. I work with parents of kids who, are struggling, 8, 9 years old, all the way up to adults.
So in your life, who has consistently been kind of a role model or a hero for you?
I would say my mother. She's always glasses half full and always optimistic. She surrounds herself with a lot of people. She's healthy and active and engaged at age 80. She's going to be 82 in a week. So, who wouldn't want a life? She's had some issues in her life. She got divorced, but, who wouldn't want to be around somebody who's healthy and positive and family oriented? So, I look up to that because it reminds me, there's, if you're having a bad day, there's still a lot to be grateful for. And my mother's been consistent in that way for 80 plus years.
So if you could meet anybody alive on the planet right now and spend a little time with them, who would it be?
Wow. I would say Warren Buffett. And I think the reason is because he's got a balance of everything that I have tried to balance in my life. He's had obviously an amazing track record in the business world, and looks at the value in things to try to invest in things and nurture things. He trusts the people that work for him to do the right thing. And he's a good man. He invests in his community. He invests in his family. He lives in the same house he's had since 1960. So I just think kind of understanding somebody who's accomplished a lot but still has his feet on the ground, would be a kind of an interesting opportunity.
I agree. I've been fascinated by the Buffett story for a long time. So, of all of the things that you've accomplished and done in your life, what are you the proudest of?
My marriage. I've been married 30 years on April 24th of this year. And, my wife and I met at a wedding. We lived in different places and actually didn't live in the same place until we were engaged. And we're very different. We don't have, we have the same values, but we don't have a lot of the same interests. And being able to find our way to create interests together and be able to raise our kids through some turmoil and be able to enjoy each other's companies and still be very good friends is kind of an amazing thing. And, the minute you are dedicated to somebody else, and then the minute you have kids, you realize that it's more than just about you. So I'm prideful in that, and I'm lucky she's stuck with me.
So let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into the 20-year-old version of yourself, and you could give that version of you a piece of advice based on the life you've lived, the wisdom you've gained. What would you tell your young version?
Don't sweat the small stuff. I mean, when I was in my 20s and 30s, I, would panic over, if I had a bad day, I would think was losing my job and my life was ending. Or if I had an argument with somebody, I thought, things I would never be able to recover. And as you get older, you realize, if it's, unless you're terminally ill, there's always, there's always an alternative. There's always an option. And I wasn't going to, if I lost my job, I was never going to be out on the street. I have family. I've got other means. And as I got older, I just, I kind of realized that if something didn't go so well, that, the next day would be a new day, and I'd have a new opportunity to either, to learn from my experiences and build on those things. And I wasn't mature enough at that time in my life to kind of really put that all together.
So, of all of the clients...
And just one thing, I'm sorry.
You're fine.
I've actually gone back to my alma mater a couple of times and been asked to speak about what I wish I knew when I was 22. And, or that's the presentation I put together, and it included elements of that as well as other career things and things I've learned in my career along the way. And so that was fun to do because I didn't have that guidance, or somebody to come in to kind of tell me those kinds of things at 22. So it inspired me to kind of give back.
That's great. So of all of the clients and all of the work that you've done in your life, what's been the best success story, fan letter, so to speak?
I mean, if I take it from both sides of my career, if you go to my website, parentsjourneycoaching.net, you could see reviews that are glowing. I'm fortunate enough. And, there are people who have basically said that, the trajectory of my life and my relationship with my family and my kid has changed because of some of the approaches you helped facilitate for me to try and implement and adjust and go through. And, there are many of them, and I gave you an example earlier of that family. And so, those are the most meaningful ones, and I get to do that every day, which is pretty cool. The only time I haven't succeeded with people is if people weren't willing to do the work. If they're willing to engage and they're willing to try things, they will be successful. And that happens 99% of the time. They'll achieve their goals and move in the right direction. And then when it comes to business, I mean, I had some very, big successes in terms of business development and client satisfaction. I think the biggest compliment or thing that I could do is in the firm that I ran for 13 years. It was a commercial real estate firm. We typically had 3 to 5 year contracts. I never didn't renew one of those long-term contracts for those clients that I was principal and responsible for. So, if there's any, and the reason was I had clients who would go through growth spurts, they'd go through contractions, they'd need different services, They need different help. They need extra things. And I took the long view with them. I wasn't trying to maximize the dollars I was trying to get at that particular moment. I was trying to have a good partnership that would endure, because it's so hard to get, these long-term contracts had 6 to 12 month cycles in order to be able to win the business, because they were multi-million-dollar contracts. It wasn't like buying something on Amazon. So keeping them happy and being able to work with them made a big difference in my life. And I had big contracts. I worked, we did all of Delta Airlines real estate work. We did all of United Technologies real estate work. We did all of Farmers Insurance and Computer Sciences Corporation's real estate work. So, it was a good story. And
so
part of it has to do with the whole rejection thing when I was a kid. I wanted to make sure that people were happy, and so I went the extra mile.
Andy, everyone out there has a perception of you. There's different pockets of people that exist in our lives collectively: family, friends, clients, contacts, but ultimately you run the show. What's your perception of yourself? Who do you think you are?
I think I'm a good person who tries to do the right thing, who, is humble enough to realize that I have a lot of flaws and a lot of challenges. And it keeps me humble, and it, gives me the ability to keep learning and growing. And, I stick my foot in my mouth on occasion. I do the wrong thing on occasion, as many of us do. But I view myself as somebody who's humble, who likes to connect with people and likes to help. And, I don't view arrogance or the ability to view other people's side of the story or understanding very well. And so, at the end of the day, it's funny that one thing that I've done with people is I have them write their own eulogy, and not just a blurb that you'd see in a newspaper, but like a 500 to 750 word, story of my life and where I want to be, and it actually kind of spells out where they are until they die, and that gave me the opportunity when I did it myself to really think about where I've come from and the type of person I am and the type of person I want to be in my remaining years.
Wonderful. So if anyone out there wants to learn more about you, hire you, anything involving your world, where's the best place for them to go?
Sure. I mentioned it before, and my website is parentsjourneycoaching.net. Would love to help any parents who have any concerns or questions or interests. If I'm a good fit to help somebody, I'll suggest it. If I'm not, maybe there are other resources or other ways I can point you in the right direction. If you go onto that website, there's an opportunity with all my contact information and a way to even schedule a no obligation discovery call.
Andy, this has been a triumphant story. Thank you for all the great work you're doing. Thank you for opening up your story. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for your time and for the opportunity to speak with you.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, business, spirituality, music, and more from around the globe. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube. Find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.